Today I'm going to talk about human rights in the United Arab Emirates. Now, what are human rights? Human rights is the right to liberty, the right to achieve the pursuit of happiness, and the right to live your life free of discrimination, the right to control what happens to your body and make medical decisions for yourself. Human rights inherent to all human beings, whatever our nationality, place of residence, sex, national or ethnic origin, color, religion, language or other status. We are equally entitled to our human rights without discrimination. These rights are all interrelated and interdependent and indivisible. Okay, now this is a real life situation that happened to me in 2010 when I was 11 years old. And during the month of January, my parents and I were watching television and my dad had gotten a phone call. So he was on the phone and after 30 seconds of him in the conversation, his face completely changed, and then after the phone call he just rushed out, and me being so small I didn't know what was happening. So I asked my mom what was up and she said she didn't know. So I went to sleep and the next morning I asked my mom what had happened and she said my uncle was in trouble. He had come with some issue in the airport and he might go to jail. So me not realizing the importance of that situation at that time, I just, it was just an everyday thing. And now I know exactly what had happened, and what had happened was he was coming back from Kerala. He was in the Abu Dhabi International Airport and he was waiting in line to go through customs. And in front of him were a couple of African American people. And all of a sudden these people with black suits came and pointed a gun at him. Everyone was forced to come on the floor and they had taken him, they had handcuffed him and they had taken him into a car and taken him to a place. And he had my dad had found out somehow that he was there and he had got in this trouble. And he was restricted from all contact, he couldn't contact anyone for 6 months and he was in jail for 5 years. He was released last year and this was for no reason at all. This put fear into everyone who goes to United Emirates, who are foreign expats, who live there. It's just for no reason he has been gone to jail. And what happened was, last year when he was released, he didn't know anyone who spoke English, and when he was released they just blindfolded him, took him into a car, threw him into a desert, and all he heard from one of the security guards was, "You are free now." So it's just not right. So it brings fear into the people who are foreign expats in the UAE. Now, should the suspect of crime be granted a trial and investigation? Yes, obviously, they should be granted with a trial and investigation to verify whether the person is truly guilty or not. Now, it is ethically right to grant the person a trial and investigation. A person's home country or religion should not be considered when he is being accused of something. He should be accused based on the scientifically proven facts. Now, my knowledge question is, to what extent can one rely on the decisions made in the cultural context of a country? Now, what is justice? Justice is a moral-based right on ethics, law and equity. Justice is done to punish those who have done the crime and to prove the righteousness to those who are innocent. The concept of justice differs from region to region, but the basic rights like human fundamental rights are implied on all constitutions around the world. Now, this is a second real life situation. It is not as close to me as the first real life situation was. Now, the authorities in the UAE have subjected foreign nationals in secret detention to electric shocks, beatings and other abuses, according to evidence shared with The Guardian by multiple sources within the country. The evidence depicts a variety of brutal techniques employed by the UAE interrogators on several foreign nationals, including 2 Americans, a Canadian, and 2 Libyans. They were detained since August 2014, most of the time without charge. They were tortured without any reason, for no reason at all. According to the sources in the UAE, each of the prisoners suffered severe beatings, sometimes with rods, sometimes in what was called a boxing ring, and sometimes suspended from a chain. Other techniques described including electrical shocks, prying of fingernails, pouring insects onto the inmates, dousing prisoners with cold water in front of a fan, and they were sleep deprived sometimes for 20 days. Threats of rape and sexual harassment, and in 2 cases, sexual abuse was reported. In a report obtained through Canada's Access of Information Act, for instance, the consular officials documented visible injuries on the 46-year-old Salim Al-Faradi, a Canadian Libyan citizen, when they visited him. The report from December 2014 details visible bruises about 2 inches in diameter on his left arm and his leg. Al-Radi's brother Muhammad was also detained without charge that year but was eventually released. Last year he told The Guardian that authorities used an electric chair machine tied to his nails, sleep deprivation and beatings during the interrogations. But this was all because there was no reason behind this. If they had done something also, they're not supposed to interrogate people like this. But on top of all that, they hadn't done anything. They were just foreign expats coming into the country maybe for tourist attractions or something like that, but then they didn't do anything and they were interrogated for about 2 years. Now what does the UN say on human rights? Now promoting respect for human rights is the core purpose for the United Nations, and it defines its identity as an organization for people around the world. To do so, the United Nations system uses all the resources in its disposal, including its moral authority, diplomatic creativity, and its operational reach. Member states, however, have the primary responsibility for protecting human rights of the populations around the world. Now, how does the ways of knowing affect the way that officials of the UAE treat the suspect of crime? Now, the ways of knowing plays an important role on the prison guards and federal occupants of the UAE. And only based on the ways of knowing like ethics, emotion, reason, imagination will be their response towards torture. Like they had said in the real life situation before that it was called a boxing ring, they were suspended from a chain, they took off their fingernails, those are all coming through imagination. So this is how imagination interrelates to the ways how they were tortured. And emotion, they're completely emotionless. Imagine any of us being educated in one of the richest countries in the world, torturing people for no reason at all. So they are basically emotionless. Now empiricism. Now this is the theory that all knowledge is based on the experience derived from the senses. Stimulated by the rise of experimental science developed in the 17th and 18th century, it is the study of human knowledge based on rationales and real evidences. Basically, it is the philosophy of science that emphasizes evidence. It is what everyone follows in America and most of the countries, but it was not being followed over here. Now, it is usually followed by most judicial systems and most countries. Now, my perspective, this is what I feel. I feel that the UAE is certainly violating a number of fundamental practices. The UAE does not have a democratically elected institution, and citizens do not have the right to change the government to form political parties. There are reports of forced disappearances in the UAE. Many foreign nationals and Emirati citizens have been abducted by the UAE officials and illegally detained in undisclosed locations. I feel that the UAE should look in on this and put a stop to the illegality that is being followed. The media in the UAE is controlled and hence the violations are not publicized. They are forced to not talk about it. The freedom of speech is not granted in the UAE. Human rights should strictly be enforced into the UAE by the UN to end unethical treatment of the citizens of the UAE. Now the conclusion is that human rights should be justified in the United Arab Emirates. Torture should not be used, and instead skilled interrogation techniques should be used if at all they had done a crime. Suspects must be allowed to contact his or her lawyer and should be given a fair trial. All suspects must not be treated differently based on their religion, sex or the place where they are from. Empiricism should be implied on the solving of all crimes that require an investigation.
So would you answer that?
Rishan, do you think this is a very rare case occurrences? If that would have been a very frequent case of occurrences that the tourism would have been very deeply affected in
No, I told you that I said that the press is controlled, yeah, so very few people know about it. When you Google it, it's like not on the first page, not on the second page. I've researched a lot. I finally found about these things, like my uncle, like I told you, yeah, my uncle was pointed out in the country. Imagine if that happened in India. Everyone would have known about it. For no reason, he was in jail for 5 years. But over there, it's all controlled, so not much of the foreign people know about it. So they just look at it as a very big, growing city with the tallest building in the world, most expensive hotel in the world. So they just go for that. So they're not aware of all these things that could happen to them.
Rishan, in the cultural context, Would people need empiricism or would they need prior warning to go to this kind of a culturally strong country? Would people need prior warning?
Why
or
should there
will-
be prior warning if
Yeah.
if empiricism is implied onto the country? Like empiricism basically means that you should have evidence to what they have done. Like my uncle, he had not imported any guns or anything. He just came as a normal citizen waiting in line to go through the customs. So if they had done an investigation or if he had done something or not, then he would have just been normal. Like he wouldn't have faced 5 years of his life in jail. So why should people be warned if they can actually look after the evidences on what they had done? If they had actually done something, only then they should be taken to jail, and that only can be done if they follow empiricism.